What this really comes down to is a fight over language and what we really mean about one very specific word. But it also comes down to more than that. It comes down to being able to have an intellectual discussion about something, and certain people who want to cut off certain avenues of discussion. So let's do this. Hey everybody, BionicDance here. So, Agent of Doubt just tried to call me out for using Richard Dawkins to endorse the notion that babies are atheists. Well, truth is I didn't even really do that. I just tend to use that intro whenever I make an atheism-related video, because, hey, it's kind of cool. But the fact of the matter is that, really, what this whole babies are atheists matter comes down to is really not even about babies being atheists. Not really. What it comes down to is what the word atheism itself means. That's really what it's about. That's why I argue about it. Because there are people out there who really want atheism itself to be about deliberate choice. To be, I chose to be an atheist. I weighed all of the options and said God isn't there and thus I don't believe. But that's not in the word. It's not there. Atheism is a much broader category than that. It's actually just, I'm not a God believer. That's all the word says. It doesn't say anything about how you ended up as one. And you can be one by default. Unlike being a religious person, an actual religious person, you can be a non-believer by default, kind of like being a non-stamp collector, like that argument. And some people really don't like that, and I'm not sure why. But I think they desperately need some sort of symmetry, like it's sort of an OCD kind of thing, you know? That they're like, well, if you have to choose to be religious, you also have to choose to be atheist. Otherwise, there's some sort of null state that's neither one of them. I think people desperately need that. But it's just simply not the case. Regardless, that seems to be the root of the problem, the root of the disagreement here.
Dawkins uses a model of 7 different points on a spectrum, and he calls himself the de facto atheist. So, yeah, that's the model that he's using. The reason why he's using a different model than BionicDance's binary set is because in science you want your models to reflect reality, and if you were to say all babies are atheists, well, how does that affect reality? Can you use that model to predict which babies will turn out to be atheists or not? Will that determine whether or not they are atheists in the future? No, that model sucks on predicting who's going to be an atheist in the future if you're calling all babies atheists to begin with.
Okay, this argument is completely asinine. Agent of Doubt has no idea what he's talking about, because the truth is that I use pretty much the same argument that Dawkins does. I just describe it kind of differently and do it in 2 steps instead of 1. The fact is that I first look at whether or not somebody believes in any gods, and then I determine the strength and the reasons for that belief, where Dawkins does it all in a single scale. And so it's pretty much the same thing. Plus, neither of us is really concerned with whether or not babies are going to believe in gods later in life. That has nothing to do with it. And how many times have people changed religions or lost their faith or gained one later in life? That's a completely separate issue. That has nothing to do with this. So I don't even know where Agent of Doubt is getting this in the first place. It's just, he really, honestly, he's talking completely out of his ass here.
Next, what I want to say about BionicDance using Richard Dawkins at the beginning of her making this point about babies being atheists, there's a few quotes in Richard Dawkins' book. The first I'm going to go with is on page 315 of the first edition. Fourth, to pursue the same theme, is the assumption that a 6-year-old child can properly be said to have a religion at all whether it is Jewish or Christian or anything else. To put it another way, the idea that baptizing an unknowing, uncomprehending child can change him from one religion to another at a stroke seems absurd. But it is surely not more absurd than labeling a tiny child as belonging to any particular religion in the first place.
And here is where we're going to have that disagreement about terminology. Because, again, some of you are going to insist that atheism is a deliberate, explicit choice, that it's something you join, that it's as much a religion as anything else, like Catholicism or Islam or Hinduism or something. I say it's not. I say atheism is a default position, potentially, or it could be something that you explicitly choose. But regardless, whatever it is, it's the state of not having God belief, however you come to that position. And I have quotes from Richard Dawkins, too. He kind of agrees. I mean, there are those of you who will again insist that atheism is atheosism, godlessism, instead of atheism being without theism. But again, we have a quote here. A friend who was brought up a Jew and still observes the Sabbath and other Jewish customs out of loyalty to his heritage describes himself as a tooth fairy agnostic. He regards God as no more probable than the tooth fairy. You can't disprove either hypothesis, and both are equally improbable. He is an atheist, a-theist, to exactly the same large extent that he is an atheist and agnostic about both to the same small extent. So, again, Richard Dawkins kind of endorsing my position, atheist without theism. That's what the word means here in this context. I'm going to continue to use the word atheism to mean without religion, without theism. And babies are without religion. They are without theism. That's what the syllable a means. It means without, or not, or opposite. And that covers a lot of ground. If I say that I am an atheist, I could mean I'm the opposite of a theist. That could mean I am without theism, or not a theist. And if I described a baby that way, if I described a baby as an atheist, as not a theist, I'd be accurate. So if you don't want to use that word to describe babies, well, we're having a semantic argument. I suspect we might not actually be having an ideological argument. I suspect you might agree with me that babies aren't theists. So, really, what are we actually disagreeing about, I wonder? Because do you agree with me that babies don't believe in God? Do you agree with me that babies aren't theists? So when I say that babies are atheists and you disagree with me, what are you really saying? I mean, the reason I argue about this is because I think that people who insist that babies aren't atheists and that atheism cannot be a default position, what they're really doing is they're cutting off conversation. When they insist that atheism has to be an explicit position, that it's something that you explicitly say, yes, this is something that I am choosing for myself, what you're really doing is that you're cutting off a certain amount of hypothetical thought. And that's not very scientific. I mean, maybe you will make the argument, which Agent of Doubt did actually at one point, you're making the argument that it's not a very useful thing to say, and so why should we discuss it? Why should the word ever mean that? But there are a lot of things in science that right now are not immediately useful, and yet we still talk about them. I can't think of an immediate practical application for the notion of black holes or whether or not they might emit radiation, yet we still study them. Why? Because those are the facts. That's actuality. In reality, babies don't believe in God and they're not theists. They have not joined a church explicitly. They haven't done it. They're not members. So, those are the facts. Let's stick to them. Let's actually discuss them as they match reality, whether they seem useful or not. I mean, isn't that really the scientific way to go about this, to discuss reality as it is? I think so. So why don't we actually say, yes, babies are atheists. Maybe it's not useful, and maybe they're not explicit atheists, and I don't think you have to be an explicit atheist to be an atheist. Why don't we have that discussion? It seems reasonable to me. I mean, this isn't really, again, like I say, it's not really about babies. It's about the language we use and the way we think about this word. You know? It's about having a much more complete vision of the world, having a more complete vision of what the word means, of what being without religion means, how you can be without religion, the ways in which people can be without religion. When people insist that the only way you can be without religion, the only way you can be an atheist, is to have weighed all of the different factors and decided it deliberately, I say bullshit. That's not true. And yet people insist, no, the word has to only mean that. It has to mean God denial. And they're wrong about that. How many times do we have to go around and around on this until it sinks in?
From page 338 of the first edition, thebrights.net, an American initiative to rebrand atheists as brights the same way as homosexuals successfully branded themselves as gays, is scrupulous in setting out the rules for children to sign up. The decision to be a bright must be a child's. Any youngster who is told he or she must or should be a bright cannot be a bright.
But see, again, atheism, not a religion. It's not like a religion. It's not something you join. It's not something with traditions or dogma. It's just not having religious belief. No matter how or why you don't have religious belief. That's all it is. So, I'm sorry, but when you try to compare it to something like the Brights, which is something that was deliberately created, that clearly has rules, which is pretty darn close to dogma, I hate to say it, but it is, you're just wrong to do it. I'm sorry, the comparison's invalid. Atheism is being without God belief, no matter how or why you came to not have God belief, and that includes babies.
Now, that line actually follows a story that I have a video clip of Richard Dawkins retelling himself, and what I want you to pay attention to is the way that Richard Dawkins brings ridicule on those people who would call a 4-year-old child an atheist.
Actually, I want you to pay attention, because Dawkins is really illustrating my point, namely that if you associate children with groups or associations that require that you have an intellectual understanding of what they're about, that's kind of ridiculous. In fact, the one time that atheism is even mentioned in this, the context makes it pretty clear that he's talking about an atheist who's a 7 on Dawkins' own scale, really. And that's obviously not the only way to be an atheist from Dawkins' own writings. So it's pretty clear that Dawkins is not supporting Agent of Doubt here. Have a look.
And I want to raise our consciousness about some unconscious assumptions we all make about religion. Let me try a little experiment on you. At Christmas time one year, my newspaper in Britain, The Independent, was looking for a seasonal picture, and they found a heartwarmingly ecumenical one at a school nativity play. The 3 wise men were played by Shadbreet, a Sikh, Musharraf, a Muslim, and Adele, a Christian, all aged 4. Now my guess is that you probably think that picture's rather sweet. How nice that 4-year-olds who belong to different religions should come together in a nativity play. And I suppose the caption said this: Shadbreet, a socialist, Musharraf, a conservative, and Adele, a liberal, all aged 4. Shadbreet, an atheist, Musharraf, an agnostic, and Adele, a secular humanist. all aged 4. I'm trying to raise consciousness. I hope that that series of 3 slides has raised your consciousness. I hope that every time from now on you hear anybody talking about, say, a Catholic child, or a Protestant child, or a Muslim child, you will protest. You will say, you wouldn't talk about a postmodernist child, or a Keynesian child, or a Hayekian monetarist child. There is no such thing as a Catholic child. There's only a child of Catholic parents. There's no such thing as a Protestant child. Only a child of Protestant parents. There's no such thing as a Muslim child. Only a child of Muslim parents. I repeat these slogans over and over again, probably too often. Too often? It can't be too often when you're in the business of consciousness raising. Please join me in protesting every time you hear anyone ever referring to a Catholic child, a Christian child, a Muslim child, etc.
And then at the end there was some text. He didn't actually speak it, but he said if you don't think that Dawkins was saying, with the etc. at the end, that he was including children, you should read chapter 9, which says childhood, abuse, and the escape from religion. But see, that's the thing. It says escape from religion. If you escape from religion, what is it? Atheism. You no longer believe. That's right. You're not religious anymore. Duh. So, and I'm reading through here, and it's got a lot of stuff about how, you don't call children Christians or Muslims. You call them children of Christian or Muslim parents. But it doesn't ever actually say you don't call them atheists. They're children of atheist parents. It doesn't actually say that anywhere. And the thing is, if they don't believe in God, they don't believe in God. There's no dogma there. There's no real... I realize there's cultural baggage, but there's nothing in atheism that tells you what to do. It's not like religion. I know a lot of people seem to equate atheism with being a religion. I suppose is it that OCD thing I said at the beginning of the video? Is that it? That some of you just can't handle the idea of, well, religion is something that's explicitly chosen, and thus so too must atheism be. Is that it? Is that really it? Where you can't handle the idea of, well, here's religion, and here's atheism, and atheism isn't religion's exact opposite. Atheism is an anti-religion, and we can't handle that. Is that really it? Because that seems to be it. That feels like it for some of you, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't feel like that. That's what it feels like sometimes when I talk to people, where they seem unable to handle that notion of here's religion, and then atheism is without religion. Atheism is religion taken away. Atheism is the absence of religion. And you can come to atheism in many different ways because you can be without religion in many different ways. Seems like a lot of people can't handle that, And it seems like if we can just get past that mental block that some people have with atheism being this null set, this lack of religion, if we could just get past that, we might actually be able to have a real conversation. But some of you insist, no, atheism is this thing you join just like a religion. And otherwise you are, like the null set is something not called atheism or religion. It's just null, I guess. And that's not the case. It's just not, But, well, how do we have that discussion? Because I don't think we actually disagree in principle, really. I think that actually we really do agree on everything but terminology. I actually think we do. And if we could just get past that block, if we could agree that atheism is lacking religion, and it doesn't matter how you came to lack religion, how you are without God belief, if we could just agree to that, then we could get past this whole issue and it would be done. You know, we could have other conversations about other things. It'd be nice if we could do that. Is there a way we can manage that? Can we just agree to say atheism, not believing in God, not having a religion? And if we want to talk about how we came to that position, we'll add adjectives to the word atheism. Can we agree to that? Because if we can agree to that, then, hey, you know, we're done talking about atheist babies. Is that a possibility? Can we, you know, could we shake hands on that shit and be done with it for once and for all? Wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. Please take the time to rate this video. And hey, if you dig what I do, subscribe. And please visit my Zazzle store, where you'll find all kinds of BionicDance merchandise. If you don't like what I'm saying, there's a good chance you're the reason I'm saying it.